The Trek Geeks Podcast is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the place for amazing pin collectibles with over 300 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every single month. Stay tuned for a special discount code good on your next order at fansets.com just for Trek Geeks listeners. Fansets. Our pins have character.
This episode is also sponsored by Science Division, the makers of the galaxy's first interactive tribble that you can control with your very own smartphone. Find out more about this amazing collectible and sign up for their mailing list for special offers at sciencediv.com. Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun.
Hi, this is Andy Robinson, Elam Garrick on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little podcast this side of the Gamma Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks Podcast with Dan Davidson and Bill Smith. Failure to tune in would not sit well with the Obsidian Order.
From Podfleet headquarters, where a joint session of the Podfleet Congress is about to commence to discuss all kinds of Podfleety things. It's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, the flagship of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, and welcome to the Trek Geeks Podcast. And episode number 252. We're excited to be back. We had a couple of weeks off, one of them intentional, one of them not. More about that later. But of course, I'd like to introduce my illustrious co-host. You know, after 6 years, I've pretty much run out of ways to introduce him. On 2 occasions, I've referred to him as man, myth, Montgomery Ward underwear model. But let's be honest, he's not going to be modeling underwear for anybody because I'm not even sure he's got any on. He's Dan Davidson, and Dan, now people need bleach for their minds after the picture I've painted.
I'd like to know how you know that is the fact right now, actually, now that we're talking. You haven't been over, but you must know me that well. Podfleety, what a great word. I like that. That's a great way to start off the episode, buddy. It's great to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a trying several weeks, but we had a couple weeks off, like you mentioned. Actually, more than just a couple when you think about it, because we had some great guest podcasters. But I got to say, it's always good to sit back in the podcast chair and talk Star Trek with my best bud. I'll let you know when he gets here.
Up. Yeah. Boom, boom. I just flew in from Cleveland, and boy, are my arms tired.
Oh, my God.
Well, you know, you brought up a great point. We want to offer our sincere thanks to all of the podcasters who lent their voices to Trek Geeks in celebration of Black History Month in February. Unfortunately, due to some extreme weather and some power outages in Texas, our friends at Black Alert Podcast weren't able to record their episode for us. You and I remain committed to bringing that episode to folks when they are ready to record it. It's content we want people to hear, and we are looking forward to what they have to say. But in the meantime, we hope you'll check out their podcast on your favorite podcast platform, because they have had some absolutely amazing guests recently, Dan, like, I don't know, Wilson Cruz.
Oh, yeah. You know, every once in a while, you know, a dog shines on Dan's face. I don't even know what the phrase is, but it's fantastic that we're going to have them still on when they get the chance to record, because we know what the topic is going to be. We don't want to spoil it for anyone, but trust me, it's something that you're going to want to listen to. It's going to be amazing. We can't wait for it. We hope everybody is safe down in Texas and that things are getting back to normal as much as normal can be during a pandemic and then a giant ice storm hitting the deep south. So we will bring that to you as soon as we can get it, but it's going to be worth the wait. Trust me.
In the meantime, you're stuck with us. So here we are.
There you go.
Dan, in fact, people are so stuck with us, they may want to complain to you about it. How can they get those complaints to you directly? Because I'm not going to read those.
Well, that's okay. Well, there's a whole plethora of ways that they can get in touch with us, Bill. We definitely want to hear from you folks, so please hit us up. You can go to trekgeeks.com/contact, and you can send us an email. You can send us a voicemail. You can chat with us. You can tweet at us. You can go to Camp Kittimer, which is the official Facebook group of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network over on the Book of Faces. It is the most positive Trek group on Facebook. We don't allow trolling. We don't allow gatekeeping. We only want people celebrating what they love about Trek. So search for Camp Kittimer. You'll find us. We'll let you right in. And we want to thank our wonderful admins, Haley, Jackie, and Fark, for the amazing job they do running the camp, because I can't imagine it's very easy, especially when you got two Nimrods like us in there. But please remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode, Bill.
Yes, they will, Dan. Thank you so much for that lovely information. You're doing a great job.
They are.
You is?
They is. Ours was going to be. And as ours was where we become what?
Take another drink. Dan, as always, we want to thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of Trek Geeks and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. You know, as you would expect, they are hard at work to bring new pins our way this month. And we've already got some beauties with even more on the way.
Absolutely correct. You are, man. You know, back on March 1st, our pals over at Fansets released some new Women of Trek pins, namely Kira Nerys from Deep Space Nine and Deanna Troi from The Next Generation. And they also released the latest Picard Season 1 episode pin. This one was for episode 8, entitled Broken Pieces. And we still have some new pins to look forward to this month. The 15th is right around the corner. So around that date, you can look forward to 2 new Women of Trek pins, the re-release of Michael Burnham, which will wrap up the Group 1 pin release. And then also Soji Asha is going to be a release, which I can't wait to see, from Star Trek Picard Season 1. And speaking of Star Trek Picard Season 1, the final 2 pins for Season 1, Et en Arcadia Ego Parts 1 and 2 will also be available.
It's always fun to hear you try to use Latin. It's amazing.
I don't even know what it is.
It's a language. It's dead. Yeah. Yeah. Much like your use of English. But head on over to fansets.com. We want you to put a whole bunch of pins and other stuff in your cart. And at checkout, be sure to enter this week's special Trek Geeks discount code word TrekVerse. That's TREKVERSE in all caps with no spaces for an amazing 10% off your entire order at fansets.com. Now, this offer code will be good until March 17th, 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Plus, don't forget, when you spend more than $30 at fansets.com, you are automatically going to get free shipping in the United States.
Daylight time makes me happy because it's going to be light out so much later. Anyway, Fansets, our pins have character, and we thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Well, Science Division wants everyone to know they only have a few codes left for their promotion with Star Trek Online, Bill.
That's right. And for a limited time, you can unlock free in-game items for Star Trek Online for your PC when you order the Galaxy's first interactive Tribble from Science Division. Using the special offer code, you can unlock the following items and get $5 off your Science Division Tribble at the very same time. First off, you'll get a Rainbow Tribble in the game. And then you'll also get a Federation Elite Starter Pack for Federation Aligned captains only. This grants the following: a T6 Reliant class Advanced Light Cruiser, 12 inventory slots, 12 bank slots, 2 bridge officer slots, a Borg bridge officer, 14 Mark II very rare space gear, and 7 Mark II very rare ground gear. Plus, you're going to get a Starfleet Academy uniform. Now, all you have to do is use code REBORN in all capital letters when you check out on sciencediv.com. But hurry, the offer expires when they're out of code. So get yours today at sciencediv.com.
That's awesome. As many of you know, Science Division has been a great supporter of Trek Geeks, and Jay and Kaylia have become really great friends of ours. They have a fantastic small business, and like many others, they've been affected by the economic conditions during COVID-19. So they've entered into the FedEx Small Business Grant Contest, which is a grant program by FedEx to award 12 U.S.-based small businesses with grants up to $50,000 and up to $7,500 in FedEx Office print and business services. Now, we hope you'll consider helping them win this grant by going to sciencediv.com/vote today and voting for them in this contest. Now, you can actually vote once every 24 hours, so any help you can provide between now and the end of the contest would be greatly appreciated.
Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun, and we thank our friends at Science Division for sponsoring this week's episode. Well, Dan, here we are. Every year around this time here in the United States, our president addresses a joint session of Congress to address the state of the union. And we kind of do the same thing in our own very special way with the state of Star Trek. We look at where are we compared to where we were a year ago? Are we on the right path? Are there challenges? And those are some of the things we're going to look at today. Historically, the president gets up there and almost always utters the following words: the state of our union is strong. So, Dan, what would you say in an opening speech about the state of Star Trek?
I think regardless of what you think about various shows and your opinion of if they're successful or not, the state of Star Trek has never been as strong as it is right now, in my opinion.
I'm going to agree with you 100%. And that's one of the few times in our lives that that's ever happened. Because honestly, you're not that bright.
I'm not at all. I'll admit that.
No,
He's not, no, not at all.
No, I have to agree with you. I mean, we are in a state right now where there is Star Trek in constant production and multiple Star Treks.
Yeah.
And this is a time we have never seen in fandom. Some people say, well, yeah, you had TNG and DS9. And at one point you had DS9 and Voyager and Generations. And that's right. But how many shows do we have in production right now? 5?
Well, let's see. We got Picard season 2, Discovery season 4, Lower Decks season 2, Strange New Worlds season 1, and Prodigy season 1. So yeah. And they just announced the possibility of another movie written by a Discovery writer herself. So I think I said it last year when they were talking about Picard and Discovery going on at the same time, and Lower Decks was in the works, but we hadn't seen it yet. And Prodigy had been announced, even though we didn't know the name of it, but we knew that it was a second animated series. There was never a better time to be a Star Trek fan. And right now, that blows that out of the water.
It really does. We look at last year at this time, and there were so many unanswered questions. Picard had just barely premiered. In fact, I think in Nepenthe aired this week last year, as we record this.
Mm-hmm.
And we all had a big wave of nostalgia seeing Riker and Troy and Picard together again. And it kind of gave us a lot of love and feels for what came before. Right now, I mean, I think we've all, after going through 23 straight weeks of Star Trek, we're all like, we want more Star Trek again now. Yes, please. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the worst part of right now. The state of the franchise is strong, but I think we got to get to new Star Trek every quarter, like Viacom CBS says they want to do, because I'm jonesing already.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like we haven't had any new Star Trek now for a few weeks. What's going on? Something's not right. And that's a great but horrible feeling to have, knowing that there is so much Star Trek. Now, think about the days of Enterprise when people were saying that they were suffering from, quote, Star Trek burnout. That is completely unheard of these days. I think, from my perspective, you don't hear that anymore. Everybody wants more, and it's a great feeling. Now, like I said, you can dislike a series, or you could dislike something that happens in an episode, and that's fine. But we've never had this kind of opportunity as Star Trek fans that we're having right now, and it's really something that we really should stand back and soak in and really appreciate, because we don't know how long it's going to last.
Well, that's true. I mean, you mentioned franchise fatigue just a bit ago, and it's interesting because, back then we were doing 26 episode seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on with Enterprise, I think we were at 22 or 24 toward the end. And that's a long season, man. That's a grind.
It is, yeah.
If you're watching that over 9 months, that's some commitment over what wound up being 25 years of the Rick Berman era.
Mm-hmm.
Between, 7 seasons each of Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager, and then 4 of Enterprise. I understand that people could have felt burnt out because with the exception of settings changes, there wasn't a whole lot different about the shows.
True. Absolutely true.
To me, they were, I don't want to say that they were very one note because that's not correct, but there was a lot of similarity in format. There was a lot of similarity in the way those stories would be broken and the characters developed. But these days, we've got some series that are nothing like each other. And I think that's really what sets it apart. You've got Discovery, action-packed, lots going on. And then you've got Picard, which is sort of a really introspective look at the next phase of Jean-Luc Picard's life.
Mm-hmm.
There is some action, but largely it's drama-driven and character-driven.
Absolutely.
And then you've got Lower Decks, unlike anything in Star Trek before.
Absolutely. Love it.
And then you got Strange New Worlds coming, which is going to be theoretically closer to the episodic Star Trek we know and love.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, Prodigy. We don't really know what that's going to be yet, but it looks so exciting.
Knowing that it's being made specifically to welcome new generations of fans into the franchise is something that is a bold step, no pun intended, and one that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they do, because it could be an unbelievable success or it could be a devastating failure depending on how it's done. Now, with the people like Kate Mulgrew in it, reprising her role as Janeway, I'm going to go with it's going to be a success. But I got to say, this is probably brand new territory for the people like Alex Kurtzman and the people behind it doing this, bringing in a young generation of fans to a franchise that's 55 years old.
Having just watched or completed watching Star Wars Rebels, I'm hoping that Prodigy is to Star Trek what Rebels was for Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has such vast potential to tell such great and grandiose stories. That's not to say that the current slate of Star Trek television series aren't doing that, but this can do it in a completely different way, and certainly with a whole lot less budget.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I unfortunately have not had the time to sit down and watch all of the animated shows from Star Wars, but I hear they're all fantastic and all really expand that universe in ways that people didn't think were possible when these new shows came out. And I'm really hoping that this is the first in a step of new animated series to do exactly what the Star Wars franchise had happen to them with their animated series. I don't dislike Star Wars. I never look at a battle between Star Trek and Star Wars. They're both great franchises, but I will say Star Wars has definitely benefited from the animated series that they've done over the years. And I hope that Star Trek finally gets that piece of the pie as well.
I hope so too. We're going to talk a little more about the state of fandom in a little bit, but let's continue on with the state of the franchise. We've invoked Alex Kurtzman's name a couple of times, and we can't talk about the state of the franchise without talking about the direct influence of Alex Kurtzman. Obviously, he worked on Star Trek 2009 as a writer-producer, worked on Into Darkness. He has a tremendous amount of power and influence in the direction of this franchise right now. Is he doing a good job for Star Trek?
I think it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, the success of Star Trek has been huge in the last few years. Discovery has really taken on, even though Kurtzman supposedly has been fired like 50 times, but whatever. I think that what he has done now, I will say from a fan's perspective of what we see Star Trek, I think it's fantastic. We have heard stories about things behind the scenes, which aren't exactly the best thing we've ever heard. And that's too bad. But from a perspective of what the franchise is for the fans, I really think it has gone in a great direction. We've got fantastic new adventures. We've got new characters, but we also have that familiarity that we've seen with past characters coming back, cameos, references, all that stuff to really make it feel like it's a universe that works. So I got to say, from a perspective of where I'm sitting looking at the screen, Kurtzman's doing a good job.
For as much as I'm not a fan of Alex Kurtzman, and like you, I've heard plenty of stories about what the guy is like. I don't know him. I can't make that judgment.
Right.
All I can do is look at what's happening with Star Trek. There are things I like. There are things I don't like. But you know what? That was true of Rick Berman.
True.
That was true of Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry. Yep.
That was true of Gene Kuhn. And Fred Freiberger, and really anyone that's been at the helm of Star Trek. There are always going to be decisions that you like and dislike from whomever is running the franchise or the show.
Absolutely.
And Alex Kurtzman is no different. Ultimately, it's because of what he's doing that we have 5 shows in production right now. And
possibly another one coming that we don't know anything about yet. So it's constant. And that, I think that I'll give him credit. That's got to put a tremendous burden on him as the guy who's running the entire Star Trek universe right now, to make sure that whatever's coming down the pike, no pun intended, really works with Star Trek fans. So I'll give him credit for what he's done so far.
Well, and also, I mean, that new series Clarice on CBS is his. He and Jenny Lumet developed that.
Oh.
It's not like he's standing pat with just Star Trek. I mean,
right.
Secret Hideout Productions now has how many shows in production with CBS? It's unreal.
Yeah.
The guy pretty much, owns a good piece of what's being broadcast every week. So I appreciate what he's doing. There are things I wish he would do differently. But ultimately I'm getting more Star Trek and I have to be happy about that.
Absolutely. And I will say, what we've seen so far since he has taken over the reins, there hasn't been a failure. Far from it. There's not been a failure at all. Discovery's been a huge success. Picard was fantastic. Lower Decks was off the hook. And in my opinion, the best season 1 Star Trek series we have ever seen. So you can't say he's done it. He's done bad because it's been so popular, and CBS or Paramount Plus now has huge numbers. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's Star Trek related.
I think so too. I look at the fact that Discovery has had a carousel of a writer's room since the show started. Discovery has had now 3 showrunners across 3 seasons. And that's not great. That's not a great track record.
But you know what's great about it, Bill, is you're absolutely right. It's not a great track record to have 3 different people running the show. But from a perspective of the show and what the fans are seeing, I don't think we see that. What's the right word I'm looking for? That mess behind the man behind the curtain mess, that something like that on the other side of the creativity of the show is probably like just ridiculous to deal with. We don't see that. We see a great product being come forward. And I think that's a positive thing.
No, I agree with you there. My only concern is what happens if that chaos and that toxicity, because we heard plenty of stories about season 1. The showrunners were let go because of toxicity. There's been a lot of turnover in the writer's room since then. I'm worried that at some point that translates into the product or it affects the product. And so far, like you said, it has not, or it has not appeared to. But it's something I keep in the back of my mind because that all directly ties back to Kurtzman.
Absolutely. And he will be the one that ultimately pays the price if it does start negatively showing to us. And the quality of the show falls and new series fail and stuff like that. He will eventually bear the burden and the responsibility for that if it happens. So far, it hasn't.
So as far as what's down the road, we know that in theory, there's going to be a Section 31 series. And you know why I laugh when I say that.
Yep.
But that's not going to happen until one of the current sets of shows is over, until it's finished its run. Theoretically, the most likely candidate for that is Star Trek Picard, because Patrick Stewart is in his 80s.
Yeah.
And he's not getting any younger. And they said that they had a 3-season arc initially. Whether or not that means the show's only going to be 3 seasons, we don't know. But then theoretically, there's another unnamed live action series and potentially more in the pipeline.
Yeah.
So that makes us wonder, well, what else could there be?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a great question.
If the Star Trek universe is indeed limitless, that has to tell us that the possibilities are, well, infinite.
Yeah, and infinite combinations of shows, maybe too. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Am I right? It'll be interesting to see what else they pull out of their hat. So far, they've done a pretty good job. Now, one of my concerns, and I'm not saying this in a negative way. Please don't take it as this. They've kind of gone back and pulled the rabbit out of the hat from the past with Picard. They're doing it with Janeway, with Prodigy. Is it going to get to a point where they're going to, well, and I've complained over the years that Hollywood has run out of ideas because they keep doing remakes of movies that were 20 years ago. I don't want to see that happen with Star Trek. I don't want them to start doing things and continue to go back in the past and pull things to now to make new shows about. I want them to come up with these fresh ideas. Like you said, it's a big universe. There's lots of things going on out there. They should be able to do something brand new, but still have a Star Trek label and universe to it. And that's something that I will be looking forward to seeing at some point.
I think it would be really easy for them to spin off something from Picard, a current, I use current in air quotes, current Starfleet vessel and captain and crew off on a mission. And somehow we get introduced to them during the next or final season of Picard, whenever that is.
Sure.
And maybe that translates into its own series. Maybe we get an Alien of the Week type show that way. I don't know.
I'd like that.
I think that would be a fantastic idea. Plus, it would allow them some continuity and universe building, which I'm all for.
Right. Now, it's funny. It's I'm kind of sounding like a hypocrite because on one hand, I'm like, I don't want them to do that too much. But on the other hand, I'm like, oh my God, I love it when, oh my God, Riker and Troy showed up. That was fantastic. But when they have this Easter egg and you see the changeling from the TOS in one of the storage rooms in lower decks, that stuff is awesome. And it's always great. As long as they don't overdo it, I'm okay with it. I guess what I'm saying is I don't want them to create a new show like, oh, let's have a show back on Deep Space Nine with Jake as an adult. That's just not something that I think would work. It would kind of be like, okay, guys, let's think of something fresh here. Like that season 8 of Deep Space Nine or season 8 of Deep Space Nine that we saw in the documentary. I would be all for that because it would be a continuation of Deep Space Nine and not just let's pull something out of Deep Space Nine and try to grow from it. I just don't know if that would work continuously.
Surprisingly not, I wouldn't be all for that because I think Deep Space Nine ended perfectly.
I say that because I love the story that they showed us in that documentary about season 8. So if it was that, yeah, that'd be cool.
Although now, unfortunately, it's almost impossible to do.
Absolutely. Yep.
With the passing of both Aaron Eisenberg and Rene Auberjonois. So,
yep.
Let's move into our next phase of the state of, and that's conventions. Obviously, 2020 was a year that hurt a lot of things, not the least of which was conventions. Right. It's our opportunity as fans to congregate, to get together, to celebrate this common love that we have. But even going back before that, looking at the last couple of years of STLV, I think we can use that in kind of making our determination today. And so, Dan, I ask you, is the state of Star Trek conventions strong?
I think the state of conventions right now is the worst it's ever been. I think it's worse than the dreaded convention that Larry Nemechek has been working on a documentary for a while. I mean, I think it's bad. For more than just COVID related reasons and the fact that everything got shut down last year. I think that there has to be a lot of building the trust back with fans for conventions. And I don't know how long that's going to take.
I agree with you 100%. I think that the state of conventions is not strong at all.
No.
Granted, it's non-existent right now, but it was not doing well before the pandemic, as you state. And I am, again, in complete agreement with you. I remember a time in the 90s, and even in the late 80s, but certainly in the early to mid 90s, even in the late 90s, where there were a lot of Star Trek conventions all over the place.
Yep.
Like almost in every city and town in America, every weekend, somewhere in a city or town, there was a Star Trek convention.
Mm-hmm.
And it could call itself a Star Trek convention.
Exactly. Yep.
That's not so anymore. It's now there's sci-fi conventions because God forbid you call it a Star Trek convention because it's not licensed.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that conventions themselves for just Star Trek have atrophied so much, I ask you this question: is CBS dropping the ball on this?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I think, and no disrespect to any other science fiction show out there, when you go to a sci-fi convention, and especially with something that used to be a Star Trek convention, the luster is gone. Maybe not gone, but it's dropped considerably. And whether that's for a licensing reason or dollar signs reasons from the executives at CBS or Creation or any of these other places involved in conventions, the end result is that we, the fans, get screwed.
Yeah.
To be blunt, I mean, we've seen and we've talked to people that have just been, who are involved in the convention, who are just disgusted in how things have gone over the last few years. And now we have on top of that, the fact that we're going to get into this in a second. I'm sorry to steal your thunder. That STLV is not even STLV anymore. And that's really, it's really a shame. And I think that the decision that whoever made the decision, whether it's CBS or Creation, to not have that relationship continue is a very bad decision from a fan standpoint and a convention standpoint.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It was not a rosy relationship as far as we know.
No.
There were problems. Certainly, we know of many guests, talent who would attend Star Trek Las Vegas that weren't happy with the way things were run.
Yep.
And we can't speak to that, but clearly they can't call it Star Trek Las Vegas because it's not a licensed convention.
Right.
So it is STLV no more. Instead, it is Creation Entertainment's 55-year mission tour, which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue or create a great hashtag.
No, not at all. And that's another thing. We can't officially call it STLV, but let's be honest. Everybody probably still calls it STLV. All the fans that show up.
I do.
I know I do. I know you do. And it's really too bad. I mean, one of the things that I used to look forward to every time that we've been to these, and I haven't been to as many as you have, is when we would get to STLV and we had these huge banners that just looked fantastic of all the characters and the ships and the shows. And when you enter in the main area, there are these two things on the side of the hallway, which talks about next year's STLV brought to you by Creation. We're not going to see that this year. And that's something that has really bothered me, in the fact that they're not going to be, if there is anything, it's not going to be nearly as great as it was before, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'll be surprised, but just little things like that, little details, because it can't be a Star Trek convention anymore. We're not going to see that. And that bums me out.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from. I mean, we'll give Creation its due in many ways. I mean, there is always a guaranteed seat for every attendee, something you don't get at other cons.
True.
There is always a gigantic theater and a gigantic vendor's room.
Absolutely. Yep.
There's not a bigger vendor's room anywhere in Star Trek conventions.
I agree.
So, I mean, and plus the Rio convention facility is laid out very nice. You're not walking a mile and a half just to go from one room to the other, as you do at other convention places in Vegas. So, I mean, you know, I'll give Creation their due there. However, if you thought Creation nickeled and dimed people before, I have a feeling it's just going to be even worse with this one.
Yeah, let's charge you for printing your own PDF ticket on your own printer using your own ink. Yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. And I think you're absolutely right. They don't have, maybe having the relationship with CBS was a little bit of a help for us because they had that firewall, so to speak. I don't have that now.
Well, CBS had the final say on just about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, plus, I mean, let's be honest, Creation has to walk a very fine line because they are still getting lots of guests from Star Trek Discovery, from Star Trek Picard, presumably from Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. And that's all because CBS has said, yep, we'll help make that happen.
Right.
Maybe not in those words, but you know that if all of a sudden shooting goes over, that's going to take precedence.
Yeah.
Because it's not a CBS licensed convention.
Yep. I totally agree. And I think everybody has the right to be concerned about those things and what could happen. I think this year is going to be the litmus test. If we see a success with Creation and the Star Trek people, great. If not, we're not going to see another one like this from Creation again. And does that mean that we don't see anything in the future by anybody? Because
I don't think that'll be the case, because I think that CBS is not dumb. They understand that having some kind of convention, all you have to do is look at Star Wars and Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the most anticipated events in that fandom every year, and it moves to a different location every year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But this makes me ask the question, ReedPop, the company that runs that, the company that has the license, where the hell are you?
Absolutely. They should be sitting at CBS headquarters, talking it up and doing whatever it is to get something done, because we know how popular the Star Wars conventions are with them. And I've never been to a ReedPop convention in any way, shape, or form, but I'm very interested in seeing what they do and what they present for shows for fans.
ReedPop did Star Trek Mission New York for the 50th anniversary. In New York City at the Javits Center.
Yep.
I think they've done a couple of other cons that were specifically Star Trek related. I could have that wrong. But from what I've heard, they know how to run and organize a show. Great. Yeah. CBS, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
You have this property that is at its most popular point ever since The Next Generation, with more Star Trek in more faces than ever before. And the one thing you don't have right now is an announcement of an official convention for your fans to go to. I think that's a huge miss.
Think of the billions of dollars in merchandise that Star Trek generated every year before Discovery. Yeah. Now you've got 5 shows that are in production, and the amount of money that people are willing to spend on officially licensed material is exponentially higher than it was 4 years ago. And you would think that they would be jumping on that like you wouldn't even believe, but we haven't heard anything yet. They could be, we just haven't heard anything yet. And that makes me believe that really nothing's happening yet.
Why the hell don't I have a full set of action figures from all the new shows or play sets or Legos or whatever the equivalent's going to be with Mega Blocks?
Right.
I really feel like beyond conventions, you bring up a good point with licensing. There is just not the product out there that they'll slap the TOS logo on anything, man. Yeah. I've seen Captain Kirk on more weird things than I want to admit, but that's not happening with the new shows.
Right.
And it makes me take a step back and go, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah. It's lost revenue in my mind. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I got an email yesterday or 2 days ago about the TOS tricorder that they're working on. It's been 232 days since the last update of that product.
The Wand company who did the TOS phaser remote and then the communicator Bluetooth device. Exactly.
Yeah, they came out with an update. There should be so many more of those things going on right now. That's the one thing going on for that particular type of memorabilia. There should be all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, we have fans that's putting pins out, 5 and 6 pins a month, and that's awesome. And we got and our friends over at Science Division doing the tribbles. That's awesome. There's so much more Star Trek stuff out there that we would buy if it was being licensed and sold, and it's just not happening, and that's really surprising.
And not everything needs to be a super high-end collectible.
Right. Yeah.
Now I understand they've looked at the demographics and this fandom will support it. But I mean, I still have a bunch of the Galoob Star Trek The Next Generation action figures from 1987 on the card in a storage bin upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I got those for like, what, $3.99 a piece?
Yeah.
And those things mean the world to me.
Right.
Just as much as some of my more expensive collectibles, like my 50th anniversary Mega Blocks Enterprise, which is on top of my desk over here.
Yep.
I really think they're missing the boat with all fans.
You look at just as an example, I mean, we could talk about this aspect of the discussion for hours, but look at the Enterprise Mega Blocks. Look at the Star Wars Lego collection and the multitude of ships that they have. Mega Blocks should be putting out ships like there's no tomorrow because people will buy them because we love doing stuff like that. It's Star Trek and it's a fun project, and it isn't happening. And that's a shock, and it's got to change.
Over here, it's funny you bring up Star Wars and Legos. To my left, just off camera, I have Boba Fett's Slave One Lego ship, and I have Luke Skywalker's X-Wing right here, like within an arm's reach. Why? Because I love them. They're fun.
Yep. It blows my mind that there are not more things like with that Enterprise Mega Blocks. They don't have to be that huge. I mean, a Defiant didn't have to be that big. I would buy that in 2 seconds. Or any other ships or anything like that we see in the Star Trek universe. But
yeah, they don't have to be that gigantic size. They can be half the size.
Right. Absolutely. I don't know. I don't get that. That's one thing I'm always scratching my head over.
Well, certainly something to consider next year at this time. Although I think that when we have this part of the discussion next year, it's going to sound a lot like this one.
You think so?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay.
Looking down the road, I don't think we're going to see a massive expansion of licensed products. I really don't.
I hope you're wrong, but I'm afraid you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, Dan, lastly, as we sort of examine the state of Star Trek, let's talk about really what keeps Star Trek going. And that's Star Trek fandom. You know, for 55 years now, Star Trek exists because people love it and people have a passion for it. And it's changed lives. It has changed lives. You and I are testaments to that, as are thousands of people all over the globe.
Yep.
I ask you this, is this fandom growing? And is it growing in a healthy way?
That's a hard question to answer. I think it is growing. Unfortunately, which we'll get into more in a minute, I think the people that don't like what's happening with Star Trek are a small minority, but that small minority is decibels louder than the people that love it and are content with it. So you kind of get a skew. It seems like it might not be growing when I think it really is. With all the things coming out and the job that they have done in producing this new content, and especially with the introduction of animated series and the new one that will be eventually on Nickelodeon, I really do feel that the fandom is growing. We hear things all the time from listeners that their kids are now watching it, and that's a testament to the fact that I think that it is growing. So I am optimistic that it does continue to grow.
Do you think that up to this point, we've been getting enough new blood in fandom? And by that, I mean, let's face it, we're an aging fan base. You and I grew up on Star Trek, and that was almost 50 years ago when we started watching. Is there enough new blood coming in to ensure that Star Trek continues to go forward?
That's probably where I have a concern, because I don't think so. I don't have any data, depending on how you want to do it, to follow that up. Just my instinct is no. I don't think there is enough of that yet. I hope that with the plans that CBS has for the future, that it will draw in. Now, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to get millions of 7-year-olds watching Prodigy. That's going to take some time to see if they stick with the franchise and all the new things that are coming. But yeah, that I will agree with, or I don't know what your thought is on it, but I do think that the amount of new young generation fans is lower than I would like it to be.
I think this fandom is growing. I say that because, when we've been to STLV the last few years, we've seen a lot of young faces, and a lot of young faces who have come into the franchise with the Berman era Trek.
Yep.
Which is really kind of surprising. Kids who are 11, 12, 13 watching Deep Space Nine and loving it.
Yep.
I think that we've seen a good influx of younger people. Well, look how many people came into the franchise through the JJ movies that we know for a fact.
True. That's a good point.
I think those were really great at making people aware of what Star Trek was. And then we know at least a half dozen people who went back and then started watching it all. Or you take somebody like our good friend, senior producer Jude Tatman.
Oh yes, Yep. Absolutely.
over in the UK, who is 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And right now he's loving Enterprise.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
It's like his favorite series.
So I think that we do have a growing fandom. I think that we are bringing in a youth element to fandom. And I think that that's why we're going to see, we've got 2 animated shows on the dock, and I think we may see more. I would love for there to be an animated movie. I think that would be amazing.
It's funny that you bring up Enterprise and Jude's love of it, because you look at these series that are 25, 30, 50 years old. They all hold up. They really do. I mean, the special effects might be a little questionable in some series and stuff like that, but they really hold up. And you look at other shows that came out in the 80s or even the 90s, and they just don't hold up the way that these shows do. And I think that's a positive thing in bringing in some of these new younger viewers like Jude or like Emily.
Yep.
It's I think that's a great thing with Star Trek, that the past shows that there's quite a gap between Enterprise and Discovery still brings people in. I think that's awesome.
I do too. Let's talk about the next aspect of fandom. And it's certainly something that has really kind of changed and redefined fandom in many ways. And that's social media. A couple of years ago, we did an episode about the social media microscope and how it was potentially negatively affecting the brand new Star Trek Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're a couple of years past that, almost 3 years. And I guess the real question I have for you is social media killing fandom?
I'd like to say no, but the toxicity in social media and the ability to do things anonymously really hurts the franchise. And I think it hurts it in ways that it doesn't really affect, like other franchises don't suffer the way that I think the Star Trek franchise suffers with social media. Now, I could be 100% wrong. I don't follow all the people that talk about Star Wars all the time, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or anything like that. It could be exactly the same. But what I see on social media today with Star Trek is it disgusts me. It really does. When you're talking about a show that is supposed to be IDIC in all ways, shapes, and forms, to have the type of stuff that's being spewed out there, I think it really does hurt fandom. I really do. And it's really sad.
I'm going to say that, I've got a 2-part answer. And it's a little different. My answer is no and yes. In many ways, I think that this fandom benefits from social media, because I think that it helps us feel connected. 2, for every negative post I see about Star Trek, I see at least 100 positive posts about what people love about Star Trek, or just sharing something that they discovered, or some other aspect. I mean, there's a bot out there that just tweets out random screenshots from Star Trek episodes, and I follow it. Why? Because I like going, oh yeah, I love that episode.
Yeah, that's good.
It sparked something in me.
Yeah.
I think that there are many great things about social media. However, I think that social media is killing Star Trek fans. And by that, I mean, people are more likely to just throw their hands up in the air and give up and stop interacting.
Yep.
And maybe even walk away from Star Trek because of the actions of others. Bad actors who want nothing more than to just, piss on somebody's fandom. Mm-hmm. And that's what I have a problem with.
I got to agree with you on that 100%. And let me back up a little bit from what I was saying. One of the positive and you're absolutely right. The amount of positive posts when somebody posts a negative one is nice to see. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times the negative posts get more of the spotlight, which I think tends to bring down a lot of people. But one of the things I think is a huge benefit in today's world when it comes to social media is the amount of interaction that the Star Trek stars themselves have on social media. People like Anthony Rapp and Doug Jones and Wilson Cruz and Sonequa Martin Green, who are on social media all the time interacting with us. That's something that just didn't happen back in the day, A, because there wasn't social media, and B, it's just something that you wouldn't expect. They are so engaged with their fans that I think that is a positive thing about social media. But I 100% agree with what you said. It's not killing fandom, but it's affecting fans, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And I mean, in addition to the Discovery stars, I mean, look at people like Marina Sirtis.
Yeah.
Look at people like John Billingsley.
Mhm.
Look at people like Nana Visitor and Terry Farrell, who are out there interacting with people who've watched them for years on Twitter.
Right.
And I think it does a lot to encourage other people. I mean, especially now.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
we're all a year into a pandemic, and really being online for most people is the only way you can feel connected to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that I think you said it best earlier when you said that social media is a dual-edged sword. I really think it is. And I really think it takes a degree of caution and expertise to wield that sword.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah.
There are times in the last 6 months where you and I have just been like, you know what? I'm getting off social media. I'm done.
Yep.
I'm done.
Absolutely.
But I keep going back because of the people on social media that bring me joy. Our friends who post great things, who have great interactions with us,
Mm-hmm.
the people who keep us going.
Yeah.
Whether it's our Camp Kittimer or whether it's, you know, the people we see at cons on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram.
Yep.
I keep going back because I'll lose that interaction. And that's become just as important to my fandom as Star Trek itself.
Absolutely. 100%. And you're right. There have been times where I'm like, you know what, I'm done with this because, as I said, the detractors and the people who bash it without any real substance other than just to bash it are the most vocal. So at times it seems that that's all you see. But then if you read further into stuff, you start seeing all the positive things that other people say in defense of the series and the franchise that they love. And that makes you feel good. One of the things that I will never get over and will call people vile and disgusting for the rest of my life is when they start attacking the people that are making this craft. When they start attacking the actors or when they start attacking the writers, that's a line that you just don't cross. And unfortunately, social media gives people the feeling that they're bigger and better than they are, and they can do this and it's okay. And it really isn't.
No, you're right. It empowers cowards.
Exactly.
People who would never say these things to anybody else's face. And a lot of those people would be like, no, I'd say it to their face. I'm going to say this. Hell they would.
Nope. No way.
They absolutely would not. It makes them feel emboldened. They hide behind profiles that don't have their real name. Mm-hmm. And they toss bombs.
Cowards is a perfect way to describe it, man.
You know, it's disgusting that these are the kinds of things that just fans who want to enjoy Star Trek have to deal with. Mm-hmm. You know, how many times have we seen somebody post something they love about Star Trek Discovery only to have a gatekeeper come along and crap on it?
Yep. And then that person never wants to post anything again. And that's sad. That's really sad too.
You know, you and I have said for a long time, your fandom is yours. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I mean, you're in control of your fandom. You know, if you're on social media and you have to put up with some of these trolls, I understand it sucks to use the block button, but it's there. Yep. It's a tool that you can use. Block them or mute them or do whatever.
Mute them's better because then they think they're still being heard and they're just screaming into a void.
Yeah, but I mean, have the social experience you want. There are literal thousands of people out there on whatever social media platform you're on who are dying to talk about Star Trek with somebody.
Yep.
And always looking to make new Star Trek friends. Mm-hmm. So for somebody out there right now who may be just feeling like social media, they're done with it because it sucks and people suck. There are people out there who feel the exact same way as you and they love talking to Star Trek. So seek them out. If you really want to stay with it, celebrate your fandom because it's a part of who you are.
And and keep the faith, man. Absolutely, you gotta keep the faith of the heart, but you gotta really keep it. Absolutely. Sorry.
Well, how did I not know you were going to do that?
It's going to happen all year long.
Oh, I hope not.
Jeez, it's gonna.
So, you know, we've talked a little bit about Star Trek Prodigy and the animated stuff, and how we hope that it will usher in new fans. But do you really think it's going to be that significant a gateway to a younger fandom?
I really think it is. It's being specifically targeted to that younger audience. It's going to teach them things about life, and it's going to teach them things about Star Trek and meld them together. On top of the fact that it's going to bring in these new younger fans, it's going to also pull in fans that have been following the franchise for years because of the fact that Kate Mulgrew is going to be reprising a role as Catherine Janeway. But I absolutely believe that it will be a gateway to new fans, and I can only hope that it is much bigger than the expectations that people may have for it.
I have to agree with you. I think it will. I think that they have the right people in charge of Prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are the guys who co-wrote the Lego movie.
Yeah.
These are the guys who did the story for Hotel Transylvania.
Mm-hmm.
These are the guys who did Troll Hunters and the Lego Ninjago series. So, I think that there's great hope here for what it's going to do. I really do think that it will bring in a new generation of fans. And ultimately, I am so glad this show's going to be on Nickelodeon because it's available on just about every cable package in the country.
Yep.
But also on Paramount Plus, for those who don't.
I think that's great, that the fact that they've decided to put it on Paramount Plus to keep everything in the Star Trek universe available in one location, but then they're still going to keep that plan of releasing it on Nickelodeon, which is watched by so many millions of young people. I think that's a win-win from on both sides of the coin.
I do too. So in hindsight, Dan, I think that, the state of Star Trek is strong, but it can only get stronger. Even if we experience another lull like we did during, 2004 and 2009 when there was no Star Trek, I still think that this fandom, regardless of its age, will have plenty to be excited about. Now, granted, I don't think it's going to happen for a long time, but I think we're in as good a place as we could be, honestly.
I think one of the things that's also great is if there is a lull. Remember when we had the lull before, when it was just after TOS? We had nothing except watching
10 years
TOS video cassette, VHS tapes of the original series over and over and over again. Then after Enterprise ended and we had that lull, we had all those other series that we could go back and watch. Now, if there's a lull in 10 years, we're going to have, by that time, maybe close to 1,000 episodes of Star Trek that we would be able to watch during that lull. I don't think the word lull is going to be in the vocabulary, even if there's a lull.
Right now, there are 801 episodes, I think. If you watch an episode a day, it's going to take you over 2 years to watch it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
this is a great time to be a Star Trek fan. You and I have said that so much, but I really think that it is even more true with every passing day.
I absolutely agree, and I know that they've got some more surprises up their sleeve that they're going to be letting us know over time. So just the ones that they're working on now, and maybe the one unnamed one that they haven't said anything, there's more than that coming. And I think we're going to be very happy and very excited about new content for many, many years to come. And that lull is going to be in the 2030s, I think, at the earliest.
You're probably right about that.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, the state of 5-year mission is also quite strong.
Mm.
These guys, so many great albums, so much great music. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, Spock's Brain, Trouble with Tribbles, all CDs that you can get right now at 5yearmission.net. Go online, get them, order them, get them sent to you, get them in your hands, put them in your little disc player there, and then be prepared to rock out, because this is some great music. It's not parody. This isn't stuff to make fun of Star Trek. It really does give you a new way to look at these episodes. So that's 5yearmission.net. We thank them, as we do every week, for letting us use all of their music across the network. And we want everyone to check out 5-Year Mission, the podcast, available wherever fine podcasts are procured, Dan.
That's a great name for a podcast, isn't it?
It's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. You know what else is great, though, Bill?
Your face?
Well, that goes without saying. Come on, man. Really? But the game of Stratagema, that's a fun thing. That's great. Would you care for a game of Stratagema, Bill?
No.
Maybe against the master of the game himself, Seema Kolmarami.
Oh,
right?
God.
Yep. I mean, he's the best player ever, Even Data had a problem beating him that first time until he decided to actually play not to win, but to play to a stalemate. And he busted him up, as it were. Seema ran off all upset. And it's kind of like trying to be better than the best band in the entire Alpha Quadrant. And by that, of course, I'm talking about 5-Year Mission. Yes, you can't be better than they are. You can only hope to make mellifluous music like they do and hope that you can keep up, as if that would ever happen, my friend. There was also this little thing about the Ferengi showing up and causing real problems during a war game scenario. So, I am talking about that fantastic episode of TNG, Peak Perfarkments. It's a great one. Stratagema, you get the little things on your fingers and you're like, blah, 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 blah. Pink Perfarkments. Yeah. Peak, not pink.
Pink Perfarkments? That's only during October.
That's true. Good point. Yes, Peak Perfarkments is one that you should really check out to really learn a lot.
I'm going to bust you up.
I did not expect that.
Somewhere Ryan Jeffs has laughed at this entire thing.
Good. I thank you. I like that.
No,
not at all.
No.
Okay.
That's 5yearmission.net. Please go get all their albums, support the band, because we guarantee you're going to love it. Don't forget, of course, that you can support the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to us on Patreon, where you can get all kinds of special exclusive perks, Daniel.
Exclusive perks, indeed. We have the supporters pins. Like we're going to have another one this year. I know that. We're going to have a new T-shirt. You and I have had a couple meetings already about some other things that might be coming in the coming weeks, and we're kind of hashing that all out. Lots of great perks. Always keep your eye out for any change that we might have coming. But right now, we want to take a moment to thank our associate producers for Trek Geeks, because we are always so grateful for their support. So thank you, Vikram Bhatt, Luke Burnham, Brad DeMag, William Edward M. Jr., Brandon Everidge, Andy Fark, Kimberly Francis, Jonathan Hamilton, Ryan Jeffs, John Krikorian, Sean Lynn, Rick Mason, Jamie McGregor, Aaron Mollenkoff, Casey Pettit, Tim Robertson, Greg Rozier, Eric Sakian, Adam Sanders, Tim Serdar, Heather Sohn, Blake Strike, Lisa Tomlinson, Jessica Dax Vincent, Ron Robel, and the gracious and wonderful Conrad Hutchins.
Oh, yeah, get in the chopper.
Yes, get out of here.
Get out of here.
Wow, you okay?
Yeah, no, I think I'm fine. We also want to thank our Trek Geeks producers for their support. They are Mike Bovia, Chaz Bradshaw, Ken Bird, Kyle Castillo, Peter Craig, Craig Ewing, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Kimberly Hartman, David Hood, Leonel Marchand, Matt McGonigal, Jim McMahon, Darren Metcalf, Charlie Mulvey, Sean O'Halloran, Jamie Rogers, Casey Shasky, Chris Trebuzio, Ken Tripp, Christina Werther, and the lovely and talented Jess Vashon. The senior producer of Trek Geeks is, of course, the amazing Jude Tatman.
You too can become a producer on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and it is just so easy to do. Even Bill could do it if he wasn't one of the hosts. Just head on over to patreon.com/TrekGeeks for all the details.
Dan, next week, we're going to act like it's the mid-1980s up in here and put together some special mixtapes just for Star Trek.
I can't wait for this, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yes, just like when you created a tape of all your favorite 80s hit songs, it's time to do it for Star Trek. So next week, Bill and I will each pick an outside-the-box theme of an episode marathon and the episodes that go with it, and maybe even cuddle up next to the fire to watch them, but not with each other. No, not at all. God, that's awful. It's the Trek Mixtape Extravaganza next week on Trek Geeks, the flagship of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Of course, for even more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the other member podcasts on the network. In addition to Discovering Trek, Rewind, Politrek's 5-Year Mission, Deep Space Pride, and Infinite Trek, we are so proud to bring you the Sci-Fi Sisters as the latest addition to the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. They are truly amazing, and we hope you'll check out their podcast dropping fortnightly on Fridays. Dan, that means every 2 weeks.
Thank you. I wasn't really sure what that all meant. I thought you were talking about the video game, but I wasn't really sure.
Of course, you can find all our podcasts, including where to listen to them, by visiting trekgeeks.com/listen.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one talks Trek like we do.
And of course, for all the news on all the Star Trek CO, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode number 252 of the Trek Geeks Podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Coconut. Coconut.
Okay.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Bing bong, ding dong.
Hey,
I just called you a ding dong.
Did you ever eat those as a child, or even as an adult? Maybe
the snack cakes.
Yeah, the ding dongs. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Which did you like more, ring dings or ding dongs?
I like the ring dings. I think I used to freeze
So
them.
did I.
Put them in the
Really?
freezer. Oh yeah, good stuff.
Really, I never tried that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it now. Go get some.
My favorite for a long time was probably the Yankee Doodle cupcakes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which were no, that was different. That was the Hostess cupcake.
Ah, okay, gotcha. Yep. Okay,
I think this was made by Drake's.
I see.
But the Hostess cupcake, I mean, everything pales in comparison to the Hostess cupcake.
And I will even go one step further. Nothing pales in comparison to the orange Hostess cupcakes.
I never had that.
Oh boy, I like them. I don't eat them now. I don't eat them now. I just because I can't add to what I already got here. But those were, oh my God, those were so good. Loved those. Every once in a while they come out with like holiday ones, but the orange ones, oh, you could not go wrong with those, baby.
I can remember as a kid in the 70s walking to our local convenience store, which was literally like a quarter of a mile from the house in Manchester, and bringing my quarter to get myself a package of Yankee Doodles. And when they went up to 35 cents and I only had a quarter one day, I was beside myself.
Devastated.
Yeah, because I was all proud. Here I am going to buy something. I'd slap my quarter up on the counter, take my cupcakes home. And I felt like, I was king of the hill, even though I was like 7 years old.
Those were the days, man. We used to get this Bright Spot in Nashville was the place that I used to go to. We used to ride my bike there, and they had this candy wall. And it was like, you get 25 cents for like a marathon bar, which I don't even think they have anymore, which was this flat, flat, long caramel chocolate. Loved those things for like a quarter. Or Dinah sour eggs, the original, which weren't little tiny ones. It was one gigantic egg that was one of those layered things. I don't even know what they're called, but I used to love those. And then nowadays, if those things still existed, which they don't, but things that do exist now that did back then too, they're like $1.50 or $1.79 for one. Thing's like, you cray.
I'm sorry. Did you just drop a cray?
I did.
Is this 1992?
We're talking old school, so I went a little, not as old as the 70s, but a little older. Yeah, I did it. I'm happy. I'm proud of it. So,
spoiler alert: next year, 1992 will have been 30 years ago.
Oh my God, that's awful.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Wow. So yeah. So anyway, that's some great talking about the past. I like that. I don't want to talk about the past. Roger Clemens, you fool.
You've lost me and everyone else that doesn't pay attention to sports ball.
That's right. That's okay. I'm not even going to talk about what it means, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's because nobody cares.
Actually, it was Mark McGuire who said that, but that's okay.
Have you been drinking?
Not yet. I'm getting ready.
Maybe you should start because
hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I still got peanut butter whiskey in the freezer. It's been a long time since we've recorded, and I'm just remembering things.
It has.
Yeah, it has. It's been a long time.
I don't even remember that what we talked about last time. There was an actual outtake, which I think was early January.
I think it was because we had an awesome month of guest podcasting, so we didn't do them. But now here we are. And speaking of outtakes, let me tell you this. I learned this today. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So one thing today that made me smile, John Delancey cross stitches like I do. That made me so happy. I can't even tell you how happy I am. That's awesome. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's
you don't
remarkable.
care. You're
no, I don't. I don't care.
But yeah, he actually posted something, and our friend Haley told me about it because she cross stitches too. And I looked at the tweet, and I was like, "Oh my god, John Delancey!" Who would have thought?
See, now if you had told me, "Hey, you know who else cross stitches in addition to Haley, John Delancey," then I would have shown excitement. But because you were involved, no.
Wow. Okay, I see where we are. You didn't miss me that much, did you, fool?
No, I didn't. And then because it's John Delancey, now I can say I know one a-hole who cross stitches and one famous Star Trek person.
Okay.
And Haley.
I was going to say, you better finish that sentence off. Otherwise, somebody's going to be.
Well, I prefaced it ahead of time by saying you. There's no, you can't mix this up.
You need to clarify these days because otherwise somebody will take it out of context. That happens all the time.
I clarified it just fine. You just weren't listening.
I just didn't. Well, it's not that I wasn't listening. I just don't want to listen to you. I wasn't talking to you.
You actually are.
I'm talking to all of our listeners. I'm
sorry, Grandpa. You're here talking to me. It's amazing that in 6 years we've quadrupled our listener base from 1 to 4.
Woohoo! I love it, and they're all just as crazy as we are, and we love that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dance Mom.
Wow. Anyway,
and Donna.
What's going on? It's been a while. Yeah, well, she doesn't listen.
No. Well, you don't listen, so I mean,
she actually. You know what? I haven't recently because it's been so crazy, but I have actually been, and you know, it's awful listening to my voice, as you know. I can't stand it, and it's my own voice, so I can only imagine what other people. It's like chalk on a chalkboard or nails on a chalkboard, whatever the frig it is.
Chalk on a chalkboard. Here's the hashtag for the week.
I love it.
Hashtag dance
I know.
Chalk on
I know.
chalkboard.
Tribuzio will probably do something on Twitter about that. Thanks, pal.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I totally lost my train of thought because you went to talk on a chalkboard.
That's my job. That was a good one.
My wife just entered the room with a look at her face like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, that's me. I just don't know what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm talking about, where I'm going.
You're an idiot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I could start singing, but we can't at this point. So
please don't.
No, I won't. So anyway, yeah. So I upped my kettlebell weights in the gym this week, thanks to your wife. Yeah.
Wait, you can't blame my wife for that.
Oh, it's not a blaming. It's because of her posting. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then afterwards I was like, oh.
So you went from a 16 kilogram, because remember, those are kilograms.
Yes, to 20.
To a 20.
Yeah, which is about 44 pounds or something like that.
44, 48 pounds, somewhere.
Something like that, yeah. I decided to give it a try. Yep. So I was motivated is the word I was looking for, not blame, motivation. So thanks, Kay.
So I can tell you haven't done this in a while.
I got a lot of energy. Yeah, that's true too.
It's amazing. I would have thought you had some espresso or something.
Nothing. All I've had is this here hint water, which is already gone. None left.
That's kind of like what's in between those ears of yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Huh.
Right.
That is funny.
Wow, that's coming up on 25 years since we listened to that.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Too long.
Yep.
That's all right, though. We had 25 more years of memories to make.
Oh, God.
I'm going to open that window and jump out it.
Spoiler alert. It's not that far down.
I'd hurt myself if I land on my head.
Dude, you're going to hurt yourself no matter what you do because you're
hurt myself standing up.
Yeah. That's actually probably more likely.
It's like that commercial for, I think it's a Geico, where it's the guy who teaches people not to be like their parents. And the newest one, it's this man sitting down in a chair and he's like, ah, and he's like, did you hear that? Did you hear the noise? That's me.
Yep.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because you're old and falling apart.
I am definitely yes and yes. Yes and yes.
Like I have any room to talk.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say I didn't want to, be cast in the first stone or any of the other stupid similes or soliloquies that we might use to describe the same thing.
you had simile probably right.
I know.
Soliloquy
I went a little
apply.
bit further than I should have.
the story of your life.
Metaphorical, maybe.
It's the Dan Davidson story. I went farther than I should have.
Yep.
And that includes some bad decisions in college.
A lot of bad decisions. Yeah, including stopping college, but I finished it eventually.
Does that include the Northeast School of Broadcasting?
Would be the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Thank you very much. Please get it correct.
Sorry.
And no, that was just an addition, an add-on, so to speak. Yeah.
Did you audit those courses?
Adding to my repertoire.
Can't even say the word, can you?
Adding to my resume.
I think you were going for repertoire.
Repertoire. I was going to say repartee, and I knew that was wrong. That's why I
stopped. That's what you and I have.
Oh, that's
Witty
true.
Repartee.
Absolutely. Yep.
Or in your case, not nearly as witty as it ought to be.
Ought not be.
I use ought not quite often.
Ought not? Okay. How do you spell that? O-U-G?
It's 2 words. Yeah.
Yeah. And then K-N-O-T.
No, N-O-T.
Thank you. I'm not that dumb.
You actually are. I've edited your copy before.
True that. See, I didn't say dat. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay.
And here's the context in which I use that. It ought not be this difficult. And that's how I describe recording with you every week.
Right. That's true. I ought not be giving you this much fun every day. I don't.
Proper usage. And Lord knows you certainly don't.
Well, there you go. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, jerk. You want to do this?
Yeah, let's do it up, man. Let's do it. Let's do it. Coconut.